And he's still musing, as we've already started episode 52, Juan.
Welcome. If you are listening, I believe you're now a hardcore fan.
Yeah.
We've gone past quite
a new fan.
We've gone over 50 hours of content. If you're new to us, welcome. If you're a long member of our clan of the mere mortals,
The Busted Finger Gang.
welcome back.
Welcome back.
Musings, as always, we look back at the week that was, the learnings, the chatterings. Let's get into it. You normally I started off. You start me off.
All right.
Give me some topics. Let's talk.
Okay. So one thing I noticed while editing our last video, which if you have not seen, was episode 51, Outdoors, special edition. A lot of people were looking, man. I didn't notice it.
Walking around.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I had no clue of it. I was dialed into what we were doing in the moment. But looking back at the video, there was a shitload of people like
I agree.
full on.
Yeah.
Which I just found interesting because I just totally did not notice that when I was doing it at the time at the moment. So
I noticed it a little bit when we kind of began because I saw people kind of walking by and stop and kind of looking, or behind you normally there was a couple of people who were going to walk that way and they saw the cameras and they're like, oh, okay, we'll go around the other way. So I saw that a couple of times.
yeah.
But it was interesting. It kind of ties a little bit into mine, but we'll talk about this separately, that I think a couple of years ago, if we'd sat down and did that as well, we would have been so self-conscious about,
Super nervous.
oh, we got the cameras and we're talking and, oh, can you really hear us, and be a little bit quiet,
Yeah.
where you're right. We got into it and we were just dialed in and we were talking and it almost felt like we were on this table. There was not much difficulty. So it was a good podcast to do for both us personally. I felt was a good showcase of like, we're comfortable to be doing that. We could probably be really comfortable now to be doing it, roaming the streets and talking to people. I think we'd be at that level now.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was really good.
Well, that'd be a bit different, I think.
It was interesting that you noticed it only after in the post-editing though.
Yeah. I mean, if I'd known about it beforehand, I probably could have guessed that there would have been a little bit of eyeballs on us, just because, we had 2 cameras set up, we had the microphones, 2 laptops. So it was obvious we were doing something, But it was I suppose, now that you mention it, it's like a good reflecting point of being like, a couple of years ago, even a year ago, man, I think I would have been quite uncomfortable with that.
Well, I think it's just a reflection point that, in the past, that might have been on our mind, where this day and age, it just doesn't at all.
Yeah,
it's like, nope, that's fine. Like, we're just doing it. It's like only until afterwards that you realize people were actually doing that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really affect you.
And I think that's just getting comfortable being in front of a camera and speaking now and recording. So,
I think you're getting a lot more comfortable being in front of the camera.
Yeah, well, I do it a lot more than you know.
Yeah, because you're like learning to like look at the camera, do all your reviews, as opposed to most of mine have been with people.
Yeah.
Or on the laptop doing interviews. So it still hasn't been really camera. And I've only done the one book review with a camera, and it's still like it's completely different to talking to an individual. So
a little bit.
One of the ones I wanted to share was, you probably heard this, don't sweat the small stuff. Because we've only got 24 hours in a day. You've got to learn to prioritize, do the things that matter, don't sweat the small stuff, and if you prioritize correctly, you're not going to get everything done in a day, and that's okay. So why did this come up? So I've now had a couple of days where I have had, I work my normal day job, and people say it's 9 to 5. Yeah, mine was like 8 to 8 p.m. And I had just an ungodly amount of meetings, 20, 30 plus on a day, right?
Yeah, I remember you telling me about
it was just insane. Yep. And, I had a whole host of other things that were going on that were like really important from a work perspective. And again, in the morning, I noted down, prioritize my things, what I have to do, what's the most important, what's the most immediate, all this sort of stuff. And, I found myself, halfway through one of these particular days where I was like, just like headless chook. I've got to go do this. It's also that. And all these emails are coming through. On this particular day, I got like 1,700 emails in one day. It was just insane.
That was like a full work year for me.
Yeah. So it's just nuts. So, right, all these things are coming and I'm like, okay, what do I prioritize? And, I just started remembering this particular thing. And I'm like, okay, well, I've got to just not sweat the really small stuff where people are like, this little, like if you were comparing it to something, it's like, this is starting to strain a little bit, or this piece is blue, or, the audio on the 25th minute is a little bit off.
Yeah.
I had to just focus on like, okay, what's the big thing? Like the microphone's broken, or the video is not working, or I forgot how to speak, right? So, I like had to prioritize on my workload of, okay, these are the ones that are going to make the biggest difference, or like, the 20% of things that are making the 80% of difference, and just forget the other stuff.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the next day when you get back, a lot of those other things I just didn't attend to because they weren't priority either got resolved or just went away. Like there was such a non-issue that it wasn't even worth spending time.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting one to always, don't sweat the small stuff and focus on the priority, because a lot of times the small stuff ends up just going away on its own.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that you're probably a good manager is, and like looking after people, is for them, when they're sending you stuff, it feels like big stuff. It's like, whoa, this thing needs to get done. Like, I can't work if I can't do this, blah, blah, blah. I think that's probably what like a large part of managing is, right? Is it's dealing with people who are putting like the wrong importance on something, and so then you have to like sort of deal with their reaction to what is essentially small stuff.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting perspective just to give people a perspective on what I'm talking about, right? In that I have people reporting to me or talking to me who are, if you want to think about like my monetary perspective, they're dealing with either work that they're doing or work surrounding it that's in the order of 100 to 500K, right? And like what they're delivering, what work they're doing, the people who's working. But the people above me who I'm sort of talking to and reporting to and sort of like different stakeholders, we're looking at whole of project, that's multi-million dollars. So the issues that they think that's impacting 100 grand and the issues that are multi-million dollars, going like, oh, well, this is going to affect our multi-million dollar project.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, there's two different levels here, and it's understanding that, if someone's world is falling apart on this in this scale, but it's a medium issue all the way up here, chances are this medium issue is actually a hell of a lot more important, but it might not be as immediate. So then you can kind of filter it to go, okay, well, I can kind of address this a little bit, but that's actually the more important if you need to actually get on top of it.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the other ones around that with not sweating the small stuff, how can you fix it? So professionally, for people listening, if you are a professional or you work at all, or you could probably sometimes do is, personally as well, just delegate. If you can delegate, do it. Doing it well is interesting. I think we've talked about it before where people delegate, but then also delegate the accountability. I said this before. That's incorrect. You delegate the responsibility of a task to get given. In the end, you're still accountable for that thing to get done.
Yeah.
But delegating some of the small stuffs is really good. So again, I've tended to do this now for many years. So it's a good practice that I have where I can see items that are of lower priority. And, for me, it's easy. And that's why I sort of recommend people to have professionally a list that tells them what's important and what's important and the priority and its importance. Because once it reaches a threshold of, okay, well, this is not even going to fit into my day because of the level of importance, you can straight away know, like, okay, well, I could probably delegate this if I can. If it can be done by someone else, get it done, because it's not going to get done by you today.
Yeah.
So
how do you deal with, so one of the things I noticed when I was working was I'd always feel like my boss didn't really do that much because I never really saw what he was doing. And so he would delegate shit that I really didn't want to do, which I sort of thought was like maybe his responsibility onto me. And do you try and not justify, but show people what you're doing so that they understand? Like,
yeah, it's an interesting perspective.
Give stuff to them. There's a reason for it. It's not just because you're trying to be a lazy asshole. Which for some bosses there are.
Yeah. So I think you gotta be on. Again, it's probably a scale. So you can be like a really lazy asshole and just not do anything and force your people to do it.
Yeah. And then micromanaging asshole on the other side.
Yeah. So there's all those extremes.
And then one asshole in the middle.
Yeah. But you can be, so in Agile, just a type of methodology in project management, I guess, you can have what's called like a servant leader. The job of a servant leader, or generally you can have a servant leader anywhere, but just in particular here, is essentially to put yourself out of a job. Yeah. That's like your role. So if you're overlooking a group of, say, 8 people, right, so what they call a scrum team developing a piece of work, your whole task is for that team to become self-assured, self-working. They can deliver work without you.
Yeah.
Because if you can do that, you essentially get them up to the level that you can confidently drop in what's called like X amount of story points or workload, and they'll deliver that in 2 weeks. So you can have like a really well-oiled machine essentially that can just run through work through it. And if they need to go and work out dependencies and whatnot, they can do that.
Yeah.
So as a servant leader, you kind of want to just train them to get to that point and then be able to move to another team and do that, right? So I've done that a couple of times, and you obviously have to do it in a way that you're trying to grow the team while then you yourself looking after bigger things. But yeah, you're right. You kind of have to also show to your team or to the people you look after what then you are doing if you're not then doing your job. So in my position, it's a little bit interesting because my direct role, I should be doing something to a little bit of a lower level of some of the documentation, some of the workload and how they put it. But I've got the same workload. Like there's no way I can do that.
Yeah.
So I've sort of explained to the individuals, even my bosses, like, no, I'm not going to be doing that. Cannot. So some of the guys on the team step up to work through that. But in return, I then bring them into much higher level meetings to show them like, hey, this is how we showcase the entire product with the whole of business stakeholders and talk through what are the changes, what does it mean for businesses, what does it mean for X, Y, Z, right? And then they get to see like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's at a higher level. Like, to them, they know about this piece of the puzzle, but I'm showcasing the whole thing. And so they're like, oh, okay. There's a lot more to this than what we know specifically. So
for sure.
It's an interesting one. Personally, though, how can you do when you've got an overload of things? Now, I'm not going to go through, there's heaps of ways, but there's one particular thing I wanted to raise with you to see what you thought about it, because I've heard it a couple of times. And it's, if you have a problem that can be solved by money and you have the money available to you, then you don't have a problem.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I think I've heard that once or twice before.
And the interesting thing about it is, and the reason I first had to be like, I held back and I was like, okay, why does it feel a little bit weird to me? And I thought, it's because I've got such a scarcity mindset that to me, even if, say this video camera broke, if it broke on us, it'd be an issue. But in my mind, I'm like,
time to start searching Google for the electronic.
To me, right now, I would be like, okay, we'll just use the phone camera for a while, we'll see if that works. Where in reality, we're not begging for money right now. Like, we have the money that we could just be like, okay, fine, buy a new one.
Yeah.
Issue solved. Like, you don't have it anymore. But it's such a big thing that people just don't do that. Yeah. Right. And I think it is, if people are in a scarcity mindset, I think that's a genuine thing. I don't know if you've experienced that before, but
bits and pieces.
Yeah.
I think mine's have changed a bit now where I'll have like plateaus, I guess. So I think my capacity for dealing with bullshit is getting shorter and shorter. So like in the past, say the vacuum cleaner stops working, I'd probably try and fix it. And I'd spend hours and hours trying to fix it.
Yeah.
Now I'll probably spend like a little bit of time trying to fix it and then be like, no, all right.
Well, you got to value your time as well. It gets to that point. And one of the things we're listening to Tim Ferriss's, can't remember the episode number, it's 200 and something, reviewing his 2016, moving into 2017. Sorry, I don't know if he continues to do this, but one of the things he did was he would look at it, he would ask himself all these questions, but one of the questions was, okay, if he had $100, what would he spend it on to improve his life? $500, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. And the whole question premise about that is, okay, if you spend $5,000 on whatever to improve an aspect of your life, what would it be? And you might go, I think for him was Arabic or acrobatic lessons, or a trip to somewhere or something like that. Yeah. And he essentially, what he takes from that is, okay, well, I do have the money to do that. He spent it, and for him, it was like one of the best things he did that year. Yeah. And like obviously progressed what he cared about. And made me think about like that particular thing, don't sweat the small stuff, and prioritize things. Sometimes, people can complain and go, man, on the weekends I can't, do podcasts and I can't do all these things. I'm all busy and whatnot. And then you're also like, you have to mow and do the cleaning and blah, blah, blah. And you have a good paying job, whatnot. Sometimes you have to think and be like, well, maybe I should just be paying someone whatever $300 a weekend to go and sort this out so that I can be happy to go and do all these other things. And it's money spent, but potentially it's the money that, you're actually getting a lot more benefit than spending $300 and going out partying.
Yeah.
Right. So you might think in the short term, the partying is really the big thing, but using that money in that way might actually be super beneficial for you
Yeah.
So
I think the thing with that is, in that case there, you've given like an extra reason for doing it, which is the party. So if we just told someone right now, if you told me right now,
yeah,
you got to spend $100 on something, what would it be? It'd have a different feeling than you've got to spend some, like, okay, what is something $100 that's very useful to you? That would be the super useful. And I'd think about it and I'd say like, oh yeah, maybe some things to use for gymnastic stuff. So some like handles that I can use on the ground to practice handstands, or something like that. But it would still feel like I'm adding in like an extra 100 that's come from nowhere. But maybe if you also tied that with what's $100 you're spending,
that you could remove.
That is not useful. And then I'd probably think, yeah, you know what? That's like a carton of beer, which I don't need to drink, and plus, a little bit of chocolate here and there, some like that coffee I have once every never. Anywho, but that would be a different aspect of here's 100, what's really useful for it, but take out 100 away from somewhere as well. Yeah. And then that way
could be more
you're doing
sure.
like two good things at the same time.
Yep.
What you were starting to talk about then though was interesting, which was how do you change your internal mind states to pick out things which are hard to see. And it's so hard as an individual to see what is wrong with yourself.
Yep.
We're very judgmental of other people being hypocrites, and then we're super hypocritical ourselves. And I had a real interesting moment this week when I was reading a book called An Unquiet Mind by Kay Redfield Jamieson. And this is a book about a lady who has bipolar. It used to be called manic depressive illness or disorder.
Yep.
And one of the things I was noticing in myself while reading the book, it's relatively short, and it's basically a little bit of a story of her going as a teenager when she starts to develop symptoms of this, which is basically euphoric highs of very productive, intense, creative work for a day or 2 days, or even just a couple of hours, and then followed by very harsh depressions where she doesn't feel like getting out of bed, where she feels like nothing's worth it, her brain feels sluggish, whatnot.
Yep.
And I found myself being super judgmental of her in certain points of the book, being like, why are you doing that? Why, it's so dumb. Why are you not taking your medication? Why blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
When I guess the whole aspect of the book was, this is a genetic thing. Like this isn't an environmental thing. This is something that's just straight up in your genes. Her dad had it. Her, I think, uncle or aunt had it. And so I was just noticing this in myself, which was being very, very judgmental of her for not having like the fortitude to blah, 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 not having the fortitude to make the right decision, to not treat her family like pieces of shit when she was in a depressive mood. But then I've also had like, I suppose, a depressive part of my life and had that same sort of thing. And so it was just a very weird moment for me where I was just realizing like, what are you doing, man? You're being so judgmental of this girl when, you yourself, and if you saw it in other people, maybe a bit more closely related to myself,
then I wouldn't be more forgiving to it.
Yeah, exactly. So anywho, I think just exposing yourself, for me, to different sources of information from different people's stories. And so I think this is actually a good reason for me to read, maybe a little bit more biographies or people's accounts. To just see what's going on in their internal mind state and seeing if that matches to me.
Because often it won't.
And then that can maybe give me a little bit of insight. So that was just an interesting experience for me, just realizing
it's an interesting one to dig into, because it's often so hard when you surround yourself with the same type of information, the same people that you talk to, because you base your set of values and understanding on like that particular context. So, if you're always listening to the Tim Ferrisses, the Joe Rogans, and you're always reading like financial books or how to get wealthy books, you're going to have like a particular mindset about life. Which could be about prosperity and, how to improve and whatnot. But, you go and read about, the first black woman to become a self-made billionaire, right? And the incredible struggles that she went through. Or, go and look at any stories that Tony Robbins has with any of the individuals that he works through. you'll find like there's completely different stories and backgrounds that people have that you'll go, well, gee, even though I've learned all these things and all these ways that I can do things, I have no idea how to apply it if I was in like that particular context or in that particular position.
Yeah.
And then if you can't do that, then you can't understand people who are in that. So, I've really enjoyed the fact that I've worked with such a variety of people. So I reckon I've now worked, or at least looked after, probably in excess of 200 people, right? So, and the variety from angry South Africans to really lazy Australians to super high performing Australians, high performing.
You sure? You sure about that?
Yeah, as high performing as I can get, and everything in between, right? Which is, you meet all these different personalities, and it's that experience, which is, for me, it's awesome because then you understand how to connect with different peoples, and you see the little cues, and like, okay, well, they're doing this sort of thing, or they're doing that. But yeah, you can become really judgmental really quickly, depending on the extremity of someone's relationship with you, or the proximity of it. So, if you saw it in your own mum and dad that they were really annoying about a particular thing, you might be really forgiving about it and be like, oh, well, I can understand because of this.
Yeah.
But if you saw it on, your third removed cousin's friends, mum and dad, you'd be like, oh, look at these idiots buying freaking rice that don't understand what carbohydrates are.
Yeah.
So, it's just that, and you got to know, which is interesting, you reading that, you kind of go, oh, okay, it's good to know to be like, the proximity of relationships that I have with people influences my behavior and my judgment on them. And sometimes, I'm not saying I know how, but what's the ways that you can introduce, methods so you don't do that.
Yeah.
It happens all the time in businesses. And, it's not just that explicitly, but it's what it ends up creating silos with a lot of companies. So, even in the work where I worked a couple of years ago, we found that, close proximity, so I'm talking like within teams, you'd be really good connected and you would talk with people, but then you'd be really, and so if someone broke code within my team, you would be kind of understanding and be like, oh, I understood because this happened and that happened and this is the person and this is what they did and this time, you get it. But then someone does it in some other team, like in Canberra.
Yeah.
You're like, this idiot, get rid of the team, right? Yeah. And you'd be so angry at them. But again, it's probably the same sort of mistake that's happened just in another team, but you're so removed from it that it doesn't matter to you.
Yeah.
And that also starts creating silos and issues because then you don't want to communicate with them and they don't want to communicate with you because both parties think you're all idiots. Facebook had I was reading, there's a particular book called Silos, and it talked about the pros of Facebook, and it was written in 2016, so obviously it's progressed since then. But Facebook, the campus itself where they work, or I don't know if they still work there, it was created in such a way so it forced the maximum, I guess, clashing of human interaction when people were walking. Okay, so you were forced to try to communicate with people. The other one is that they rotated people, I think it was either monthly or just like once a month in like a 6-month period. You'd move to another team completely, like in a completely different area, and you'd just do that all the time. And people would think, well, you're kind of losing efficiency on the work you're doing, but to them, it was offset by the ability for the whole organization to be well connected and to understand, okay, this is what other teams are going through, and this is what another area is going through. And then they ended up learning a lot of things from it, but kind of reflects back to that story.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's, for companies and whatnot, there's no one. I would have thought just with human psychology, there'd be one way, this is how you should create a company and it'll get like the most productivity out of your workforce, which I guess is, that's assuming the goal of each company is to be the most productive, which, probably isn't. Yeah. A lot of companies don't try and do that. So yeah, I just found it interesting. Like, there's all these different ways of doing what you would think is the same goal, but I guess it's not really the same goal. The other thing you mentioned was clashing of people in the hallways. Yep. I almost ran over a kid today, man. I felt like a giant. So I was going around for jogs around.
Please explain that it was you running, not like you're in a car. You ran over a kid.
Yeah. So I was running around an AFL field.
Yeah.
And I saw him. I knew this was going to happen. But it was a bunch of little shit kids kicking AFL balls into the goals, and so they were all clustered around there. And I needed to like either run around them this way, but I couldn't because there was just
around the goal,
or I'd run around like inwards.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, they're obviously just hanging around here. and they weren't paying attention that I was going to be running. So I was like, I'm going to run inwards. As I'm a couple of meters away from them, I hear the coach blow the whistle from the center of the field.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of them just turn and start running. So there was one in front of me where I kicked his leg, but like, honestly, man, I slowed down because I sort of thought this might happen.
Yeah.
But I felt like I could have crushed him, man. He was, you know, he was chest height with me, but I felt like I could have just stomped on his head, and I probably should have.
Jeez.
Just to assert
Episode
my dominance.
53, Kyrin tackles kids.
From jail. Kyrin from jail.
Kyrin from jail.
Was it?
We'll see if we can connect them in.
Part 2.
Dang. A couple of more things I've got in here that I want to talk about. What I've learned about speaking. So again, you know, we've gone past the big 5-0. A lot of talking. It's more than 50 hours. We've probably easily spoken for 100 hours, I would say at this point.
Oh, that's
because we've got a total of, I've counted this, 146 videos on YouTube. Well, it tells you. So, you know, generally they're between an hour to half an hour, I guess, if you were to average them. So, yeah, maybe 70 odd hours.
Yeah, a lot of those are my book reviews as well.
That is true.
Yeah.
But then I'm talking my 4Ms.
Yeah.
So
well, cumulative, I guess.
So cumulative, there's
talking.
quite a lot.
Yeah.
But what I've learned from it is, you know, speaking to an audience is so different to speaking to people. What did I use it today? Today, actually, when I was presenting to like a big audience, I don't know how many people were there, 40 people or something in this call, all sort of business stakeholders about what we were presenting. And because I couldn't really see them, it kind of felt like I was speaking like if I was with a microphone.
Yeah.
And to my mind, I was like, okay, well, I know what I'm trying to showcase to them here. And when I spoke, I was speaking to like if I'd imagine like 40 people in front of me. So then I had to go like, you know, this is this, and this is why I'm presenting, and this is how I can help you, and this is how you would navigate it. And it just felt so much easier to present to them something, content, as opposed to like if it was like generally 2 years ago or 1 year ago, I would talk to something and be like, oh, okay, well, here's this, and this is what I'm doing, and then I click here, and then I'd type something, and I'd stop talking, but then I'm like, oh, well, I'm doing things.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just noticed that now I'm much more casual with the way that I can present a topic or something to an audience in a way for them to understand it.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas before it was more like, well, I'm just telling something, I'm just saying something, I'm just trying to get my point out. So it's so important of just going, yep, this is what I'm talking about. The other one, I wanted to note it down here because I didn't want to forget that when you talk, right, and when I'm saying all these, right, I'm talking about two things, right, and those two things are the punchline. But if I told you the punchline, which is talk is a journey and a punchline, and speaking to an audience is really good, and you got to learn the content. Well, you know the punchline, but you don't know, you know, the backstory to that. And I think I call it the journey, right? So when you're telling a story, there's a journey and there's a punchline, and it's just as important than your journey or that period where you're telling people what's going on and you're taking them through that. That's got to be good as much as the punchline, or even more so.
Yeah.
Because sure, you know, you can tell anybody a solution or what the end result is, but if you can have the right journey and the way that you show them that, that's what really makes it, you know, that next level, that next piece of like, okay, that was good, and to like, okay, that was great. This was fantastic. So again, today I felt that way where, you know, I'm just literally the punchline, the end result is that I'm just showing them a page with a couple of things, and this thing's working now. I could just throw it up and just be like, yeah, here you go. This is working. Ask me some questions.
Yeah.
Sure, that could done. But, you know, I ended up taking them through a journey and being like, let's imagine that you are, you know, a 300-person business. And so you're going through, you log in, you use this, you navigate through, you use the menu items, you go through the structure. Then you'd be placing this. You'd submit it, you'd check your thing. Then in 1 and 2 days, you'd receive it. So then, again, I'm presenting the punchline. Here's a page. But then you take them through the journey of like, what's the real experience that someone would feel? Again, probably even touching back to that point, you kind of really make someone experience what it is in the perspective that you're trying to showcase it. So, yeah, those two things I think I've found really interesting from speaking. Definitely, I think have developed in the last times that we've been talking, which has been good. I don't know if you've got any that you can highlight or... Because I've got to say, and I was saying to you privately, but I think the book reviews since the beginning have been getting really good. I think just today I listened to one of them, the Marcus Aurelius Meditations. And I swear to God, I have listened to, it's a similar review by someone else. I think it was Tim Ferriss talking about
probably his
Stoicism,
talks about him a lot,
not particularly Marcus Aurelius, but Stoicism in general.
Yeah.
And I was as captivated today on that book review as I was on one of Tim Ferriss. So I was like, dang,
what a
that
compliment.
was good. Yeah, that one was it was good.
Thank you, man. Much appreciated. I've noticed I'm getting better at them. I think, it's weird because I'm not really sure what I'm doing at the moment, in the sense of, I feel like it's more of an exploration for me and trying to get my own thoughts in order, rather than trying to like help the viewer.
Yeah.
But also providing information that would be interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird because it's like I'm not 100% trying to, like you were saying just before, like help them through a journey. It's more what I was going through, what I was thinking when it was happening. So yeah, no, thanks, man. Much appreciated. Very good.
The only other one I've got in here, we just talked about it briefly before, but I sort of noted down to bring it up. Journals and goal setting. So, recently I've been hearing a couple of people buying journals, full goal setting and whatnot. And they have these things like scientifically backed, brand new, 3-month journey. And, they've got all the things which we've been talking about for a year.
Yeah.
And doing in practice for 5 years, 6 years. And again, people have probably been doing this for many, 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 many years from a long time ago. But he just solidified the fact that, goal setting, prioritizing, reviewing, understanding why you're doing it, understanding your short and long-term goals are just so important. And, scientifically backed, cool, whatever. I've seen it to be proven to be useful and work for myself and many other people.
Yeah.
Couldn't express to people how much they need to do that sort of stuff. Make it as lightweight as possible. But if you don't know what your goals are or what your aspirations are, then you're just going to be chasing things that are externally focused, that are externally pushed on you as opposed to internally driven.
Yeah, and you can still get things done, but yeah, it does just feel like a bit more luck, a bit more haphazard. Anywho, the punchline is we're creating a journal company. We're going to call it Kiki Kyrin.
KKK.
No, that's four.
That'll sell so well.
That's 4Ks, man. Kiki. It's K-I-K-K-I. Kyrin.
Oh, right,
so
okay.
It's 4Ks.
Good.
We're
So
all
4Ks. Good. He's not a Imperial Wizard.
No.
Or a whatever the other one is.
I'm above that.
Yeah,
I'm
above the Imperial Wizard.
I'm above the Grand Dragon.
Interestingly enough, I was researching about the KKK just the other day. And the reason that I was because Tony Robbins had a special with 13 people with Black Lives Matter and all this sort of discussion. And they had on the call someone whose sort of like life journey and what he wanted to do, aspirations, was to transform as many KKK practitioners to be Black Lives Matter supporters.
Okay.
And he'd gone over 200 people.
I know who you're talking about. He's been on Joe Rogan a couple of times.
Oh, has he? Yeah, very interesting dude. Listened to for a little bit.
I can't remember his name. He's a musician as well.
Yeah, if you know who I'm talking about, that's fine. I can't recall his name either.
Yeah.
But look it up. It'll be pretty easy to find. It's very interesting. So I've got nothing else.
Yeah, very cool. No, I'm good for the moment.
Excellent. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's make it a little bit more professional here. Please join us on all the other platforms. If you haven't already, Facebook, Instagram.
Yep. YouTube,
our podcast
Apple,
pages.
yeah.
No, I'm kidding. We're not going to keep it professional.
Twitter, I
We're just
guess.
going to keep it nice and casual. Just go and connect with it. Comment, leave reviews if you can. Leave a subscription if you can.
That'd be cool.
If you want to see us talk about a particular topic, let us know.
Yep.
If you are a mere mortal that wants to connect and talk through an interview, let us know. If you have a book review that you want us to review, let us know. Because I think, Kyrin, you go through quite a lot of books anyways.
Yeah.
I don't go through it as much. But if you've got a recommendation that we should have a look at, that we haven't had a look at, or perhaps we have read it and we just haven't reviewed it, let us know.
Yeah,
That'd be really cool.
Probably like
Well,
a
you got a
good...
bucket.
If I was going to go back through all the ones that I've actually written down and sort of reviewed already, I've probably got like another 150, 200 to go through. I've got a couple of years worth in there.
Dang. All right. Anywho, that's all. One out.
Kyrin out.